On October 2nd, 1916, Private Harry Farr stood trial by field general court-martial, which was convened at Ville-sur-Ranque in France. Since his nervous collapse and arrest, his battalion had again been in action, following their part in the success in the capture of the Quadrilateral. This time, they had helped attack and take the village of Les Buffs on September 25th, part of the wider Battle of Morval. It was against this backdrop of missing two significant actions that Harry was tried. A field general court-martial was a wartime disciplinary tribunal with the power to try all military offenses. So, obviously, these guys they're not looking to hear about your excuses of why you can't get after it with the rest of the troops. And the rest of the troops are going forward. The rest of the troops are going forward, and they're fighting hard, and they're making incredible sacrifices, something that he wasn't physically able to do at this point. He had lost it. He had seen too much, he had done too much, and he was done. So they're sending him to court-martial. Harry was charged with an offense contrary to Section 4.7 of the Army Act of 1881. The exact charge was misbehaving before the enemy in such a manner as to show cowardice, to which he pleaded not guilty. Harry appeared without a prisoner's friend, so there was no like lawyer to defend him. It was just him. Just him. Assessing the overall situation, Captain Whitlow said, "I cannot say what has destroyed this man's nerves, but he has proved himself on many occasions incapable of keeping his head in action and likely to cause a panic." However, the officer made a point of differentiating between these problems and the unfortunate soldier's nature, saying, apart from his behavior, his conduct and character are very good. So he's got one person that comes forward and says, hey, he's not a bad guy. He's just lost it right now. Because he did a fair amount of fighting. The next piece of evidence was signed by W. William, the battalion's medical officer. He wrote, "I hereby certify that I examined Private Harry Farr, 1st Battalion Yorks, on October 2nd, 1916, and that, in my opinion, both the general physical and mental condition were satisfactory." Interestingly, the word good appears before the word satisfactory, but is struck out by the same hand, indicating some doubts in the officer's mind. The trial began formally with a prosecution witness, Regimental Sergeant Major H. Laking, who said, on 17th September 1916, about 9 a.m., the accused reported himself to me at A-Line Transport. He states that he was sick and had fallen out from the company the night previous on the march up to the trenches. He states he could not find his company commander for permission to fall out. I order him to report to the dressing station. When he returns, he states that they would not see him, and as he was not wounded. I then order him to proceed to the battalion with the ration party, which was going in the evening. The ration party paraded about 8 p.m. The accused was present and marched off with it. On the arrival at the ration dump, Company Quartermaster Sergeant Booth reported to me that the accused was missing. On returning to the first line for about 11 p.m., I saw the accused standing near a brazier. I asked him why he was there. He replies, "I cannot stand it." I asked him what he meant. He again replies, "I cannot stand it." I told him he would have to go to the trenches that night. He replies, "I cannot go." I order Company Quartermaster Sergeant Booth to take him up to the trenches under escort. After going 500 yards, the accused commences to scream and struggle with his escort. I again warned him that he would have to go to the trenches or be tried for cowardice. He replied, "I am not fit to go to the trenches." I then said I would take him to see a medical officer. He refused to go, saying, "I will not go any further that way." I ordered the escort to take him on. The accused started again struggling and screaming. So they actually want to take him to a medical officer that's further forward, and he's not going. He's done. The second witness to be called was Company Quartermaster Sergeant J.W. Booth of the 1st Battalion West Yorkshire Regiment. And he says, on September 17th, 1916, about 3 p.m., I ordered the accused to parade with the carrying party at 6 p.m. to go up and join his company in the trenches. The accused paraded and marched off with the ration party. On arrival at the ration dump, the accused was absent, having fallen out on the way without permission. About 9 p.m., I saw the accused near the first line transport. The regimental sergeant major ordered me to take the accused with the escort to the trenches. About 500 yards from the first line transport, the accused became violent, threatened the escort, and eventually broke away, returning to the first line transport. The regimental sergeant major ordered me to place the accused in charge of a guard. So those stories kind of line up. The third witness was Private D. Farrar, who also appears to have survived the war. He said, on September 17th, 1916, about 11:30 p.m., I was ordered by Company Quartermaster Sergeant Booth to form part of an escort to take the accused up to his company in the trenches. After going about 500 yards, the accused started struggling and saying he wanted to see a doctor. The sergeant major said he would see one when he got a bit further up. The accused refused to go any further. I tried to pull him along. The sergeant major told me to let him go, and the accused went back to the first line transport. So there's the perspective of the folks that were with Private Farr. And here is Private Farr's defense. This is what he had to say about the situation. On 16th September 1916, when going up to the trenches with my company, I fell out sick. I could not find the company officer to obtain permission. The sergeant I asked has now been wounded. I went back to the first line transport, arriving there about 2 a.m. on 17 September 1916. I would have reported at once the regimental sergeant major, only I was told he was asleep. I reported about 9 a.m. on 17 September. The sergeant major told me to go to the advanced dressing station. They, however, would not see me as I was not wounded. The sergeant major told me to go up with the ration party at night. I started with this party and had to fall out sick. I could not get permission as I was in the rear and the sergeant major was in the front, but left word with a private soldier. I returned to the first line transport, hoping to report sick to some medical officer there. On the sergeant major's return, I reported to him and said I was sick and I could not stand it. He then said, "You are a fucking coward and you will go to the trenches. I give fuck all for my life and I give fuck all for yours, and you'll get fucking well shot." The sergeant major, Company Quartermaster Booth, and Private Farrar then took me toward the trenches. We went about a mile when we met a carrying party returning under Lance Corporal Form. The sergeant major asked Lance Corporal Form where I was, and he replied, "Run away, same as last night." I said to Sergeant Major, "You have got this all made up for me." The sergeant major then told Lance Corporal Form to fall out 2 men and take me to the trenches. They commenced to shove me. I told them not to, as I was sick enough as it was. The sergeant major then grabbed my rifle and said, "I'll blow your fucking brains out if you don't go." I then called out for an officer, but there was none. I was then tripped up and commenced to struggle. After this, I do not know what happened until I found myself back in the first line transport under a guard. If the escort had not started to shove me about, I would have gone up to the trenches. It was on account of their doing this that I commenced to struggle. After the statement, Harry was cross-examined by the court's prosecutor, who asked if he had had the opportunity of reporting sick since September 16th. Harry replied, "Yes, after I was put under arrest on 18 September. A member of the court-martial then asked why he had not reported sick since his first arrest, to which he replied, fatefully, "Because being away from the shell fire, I felt better." evidence as to the character of Private Farr was presented to the court, the battalion's adjutant, Lieutenant W. Paul, stated that he knew Harry for 6 weeks. He said on working parties, he has 3 times asked for leave to fall out and return to camp as he could not stand the noise of the artillery. He was trembling and did not appear to be in a fit state. So Harry had spent 4 years in the service of his country, 2 years before the war and 2 years during it. The private soldier took part in a number of actions with his infantry battalion, most notably the Battle of Neuve Chapelle. It was one of the most intense and attritional chapters of the entire conflict on the Western Front, one of the first examples of the wholesale slaughter of British troops for which the First World War has become renowned. Within months, he was in the hospital, his nerves shattered with a diagnosis of shell shock. Yet he returned to the front in October of 1915 and fought on for another 11 months, with 2 more spells of sickness because of his shell shock.